The gospel for today is found in the song sheet this morning. This is from the Message translation, Mark chapter 13, beginning at the first verse. As Jesus walked away from the temple, one of his disciples said, "Teacher, look at that stonework, those buildings." And Jesus said, "You're impressed by this grandiose architecture? There's not a stone in the whole works that is not going to end up in a heap of rubble." Later, as he was sitting on Mount of Olives in full view of the temple, Peter, James, John, and Andrew got him off by himself and asked, "Tell us, when is this going to happen? What sign will we get that things are coming to a head?" Jesus began, "Watch out for the doomsday deceivers. Many leaders are going to show up with forged identities claiming, 'I'm the one.' They will deceive a lot of people. When you hear of wars and rumored wars, keep your head and don't panic. This is routine history and no sign of the end. Nation will fight against nation and ruler fight ruler over and over. Earthquakes will occur in various places. There will be famines, but these things are nothing compared to what's coming." Here ends the gospel. When I read this gospel lesson this morning, the words, "don't panic," stuck out for me. Every time you read a section of Scripture, depending on where you are in life, it kind of looks different to you. Sometimes it sounds different. Sometimes you hear something in that Scripture passage or story that you've heard many times, but you hear something entirely new. And that's why reading in different translations is good for us, because as the translator tries to make the language more contemporary, sometimes the understandings of the original Hebrew and Greek are made a lot clearer to us. Don't panic. This is really a section about courage. And so I looked up courage in the dictionary, and the short answer is courage is the ability to conquer fear and despair. I read some stories about people who had a great deal of courage, and this is one of them which struck me. An unknown woman in the Ravensbrück concentration camp wrote this little prayer and pinned it to the dead body of a little girl there. "O Lord," she wrote, "remember not only the men and women of goodwill, but also those of ill will. But do not remember all the sufferings they have inflicted on us. Remember rather the fruits we have brought, thanks to this suffering, our comradeship, our loyalty, our humility, our courage, our generosity, the greatness of heart which has grown out of all this. And when they come to judgment, let all the fruits which we have borne be their forgiveness." And Betsy ten Boom, who died in the same concentration camp, steadfastly refused to hate the guards who beat her and eventually beat her to death. Her dying words are both simple and profound. Listen to what she said. "We must tell the people what we have learned here. We must tell them that there is no pit so deep that God is not deeper still." What tremendous courage those are illustrations of. Most of us could not even think about writing that prayer, praying that God would see the fruits of this terrible thing as a pass against the judgment which the violent deserved. It's hard to even imagine stuff like that. And of course, this week, because of Veterans Day, I'm wondering if you have thought about and know people of courage. People you could say, some of us had parents like that, or other friends, or maybe a spouse, relative, whatever. That is a courageous person. There's a person who stands up and lives their faith, lives their values, and they do it courageously all the time. This week, veterans were highlighted, and there were lots of stories on television. I'm sure you saw some of them about some of the acts of heroism. And one show I was watching was celebrating the World War II memorial, because as we know, more and more World War II veterans are dying. And at some point, in the not too distant future, there'll probably be a point where we very seldom hear any of the witness of those veterans, because most of them will be gone. And so they told some of the most terrible, I guess, stories about the war, and they mentioned these veterans, and they put these veterans on the television, and I thought to myself, look at that bunch of old guys. There were a few women too, but this one show kind of focused on men who were airmen. I said, look at that bunch of old guys. And I thought to myself, I kind of look just like them, don't I? Getting there myself. But to think of the stories and what they lived through, and then of course they show the pictures of them next to their aircraft, all these young, strong guys who, you know, they were really tough characters in their day. They were tough physically in those days. But now, even now today, they are spiritually and mentally tough individuals. Great courage displayed. And yet when you looked at them, they were ordinary people. And I was trying to think of what examples of courage do we see around us that we kind of just take for granted or miss entirely. I was thinking of single parents, of parents who have a child or children to raise and they have no spouse for whatever reason, and they are responsible not only for working all the time, full time, and keeping house and doing all the other things, but also raising those children. A single parent is a very courageous person. I've always said that that's got to be the hardest job there is. And for those of us who raised our children with someone next to us, and we could all, every once in a while, we would come in the door and the other partner would say, for the next 2 hours, they're yours. And out the door she went. I remember that. I said, ooh, guess we had a little trouble today. And then I think of those who work in places, have jobs in corporate America or perhaps other places, but I know this is happening a lot among my friends who work in corporate America. Work in places where human dignity is not honored at all, where their talents and their specific personality is just kind of trodden on by people who are power hungry or self-possessed or have no social skills. Isn't it amazing that sometimes people rise fairly high in places of authority and they have no social skills? They're rude. They're tactless. As my father used to say, they flunked the Couth course. They don't know how to act among people. And working for people like that is a tremendous burden. And all they honor is their own aggression and expect other people to agree with them 100%. It's a tough, tough time. And other courageous people are people and their loved ones who are struggling with ongoing physical or mental health issues. And every day they face this. And every day it's one foot in front of the other. Sometimes there's progress and sometimes there's loss. But they just keep going. Courageous people. And all this in a society that emphasizes strength and emphasizes being winners and emphasizes youth and beauty and money and power. Have you noticed with the new, because many of you know I'm kind of crazy about automobiles, the new automobile ads, they show you this new car, which of course is fantastic. It's the best car on the road, according to them. And way down at the bottom of the television screen is the beginning price. Sometimes you notice, this is the beginning price, you know. Then, in parentheses, maybe even a little smaller, is price as shown. So you think, wow, $29,000 for that car. I mean, is it that good? Then the price is shown is actually $39,000 because it has so much on it to make it look so good. So in other words, they're telling us, yeah, that's about what a car costs. You ought to be able to buy that. And if you can't buy that, what's happened to you? I also love the ad where they've got a bunch of babies and then they make the mouth talk. Have you seen that one? They're sitting in front of a computer screen, and it's about investments.